During the session, we ask that you please keep yourselves muted during the moderated Q&A. During the student Q&A, you can use the reaction button to raise your hand, and please feel free to type your questions into the chat during the moderated portion, and we can ask them on your behalf. During the Q&A, please let us know if your question is for all the participants, or all the panels, or for someone in particular. Before we begin our panel, I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that York University recognizes that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Tekaronto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce Brittany McGuire, Employer and Alumni Liaison at the Career Center, who will be moderating the panel discussion this evening.
Thank you, Nikita. Good evening, everyone. We're very excited to be joined by three York alumni this evening who are all here to provide insights and strategies for finding careers and making a successful transition from post-secondary education to the workforce. Please help me welcome Fikayo, founder and executive director at Project Impacting Lives; Samir, policy and public affairs specialist at Ontario Chamber of Commerce; and Shivam, manager, reporting and insights at RBC. We will begin our session today by asking the panelists 4 questions, and then we will be opening it up to audience questions. So the first question for the panelists this evening is, please take a couple minutes to introduce yourselves and briefly tell us about your role and your key responsibilities within your current organization. And we'll start with Fikayo, please.
Okay, hey everybody, hope you all had an amazing day so far. My name is Fikayo Aderoju. I am, of course, you already know that I am a York U alumni, right? And I run a not-for-profit called Project Impacting Lives. And what we do is we distribute care packages to people facing homelessness all across Toronto. And we've actually expanded since 2019 from 20 care packages to over 10,000 of these care packages. And we support people not only on the streets, but people in shelters as well. And we've gone on to go from Toronto to different other cities in Ontario. So from London, Ontario, to Waterloo, to Hamilton, and also Ottawa as well. So it's definitely a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor to be with Shivam and Samir, and I'm looking forward to learning from them as well, and also answering the questions too.
Thank you. Shivam, you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi guys, nice to meet you all. I hope you had a great day. So yeah, my name is Shivam, and I studied Bachelor of Commerce with a major in finance at York. I graduated in December of 2022, and currently I'm working at the Royal Bank of Canada. I work in internal audit, and I work as a manager. I've also done 3 co-ops at RBC, which definitely helped me get this role, and it definitely, Career Center was a part of it. So huge shout out to the Career Center for that. But yeah, looking forward to answer your questions and help you navigate through this challenging time in your career, like I did, what I had once. And happy to connect and happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. I'll just jump in quickly, Brittany. Thank you so much, Brittany from the Career Center, and Nikita from York International, for having all of us this evening. My name is Samir Jan Mohammed. I'm a Policy and Public Affairs Specialist at the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. I've been with the Chamber for just over 2.5 years now. And my work is primarily around advocating on behalf of Ontario's business community to the provincial and federal governments. So in way of background, I came to York as an international student from Tanzania. 2014, graduated in 2018 with a bachelor's in arts in economics and international development studies. After graduating, it was a challenge, of course, to find work. I think that's a story most of us who are international students will tell you. But I very much used the time between graduating and finding my first place of work to volunteer, to learn more, to build my network. And that's how I got my first job. I worked for a federal member of parliament in her constituency office here in Toronto. And then COVID happened, and then I ended up having to do work that our team in Ottawa would have done. So very much a learning experience. Decided to make a shift out of government and into the other side, on the lobbying side. And I've been with the Chamber ever since. So thank you all so much for having us, and very much looking forward to your questions.
Okay, we'll start with you again, Samir, for this question. You've already touched on it, but can you please share an overview of your career journey as an international student with us, and your transition to post-secondary to the workforce?
Sure. So I think one of the things I really valued about my experience at York was, and I had a conversation with Brittany and Nikita right before, was the opportunity to go abroad through an exchange. And for me, that experience very much opened my eyes to a whole other sector of jobs that I wouldn't have considered, or a career path I don't think I would have actually considered, and that was in politics. I spent a year in the UK, and this was right after Brexit. Donald Trump was elected president while I was abroad. So a lot of things were happening around the world. And that was kind of when a lot of young people started to get louder around issues, whether they be geopolitical or around climate. So I very much started to engage in that world. Did a lot of Model UN, and then that kind of pushed me towards looking for work in the advocacy space, in the government space. The challenge for me as an international student was I didn't have a lot of work experience coming out of university. When I compare myself to friends who went to other post-secondary education in Ontario, they had the opportunity to do co-op. Some of them came from banks, some of them did internships over the summer. I don't think I never really had those opportunities. So post-grad, it was a challenge to look for work. So immediately started to look for volunteering work. Volunteered with my community, just doing regular stuff in the community, and like helping with food drives and whatnot. And then I found myself volunteering with the Ontario Council for International Cooperation. They're another nonprofit organization based here in Toronto, but they work with a bunch of nonprofits across Ontario. And that's an organization I recommend anyone, if you're looking for work in the nonprofit space, they're a great organization to work with. If you want to work in nonprofit, if you want to work in the policy space and the advocacy space, they're a great organization to start with. So I started volunteering with them, doing like public relations, public affairs work, kind of going to schools across Toronto, having a booth and telling people about what the council does, and the work that we do. That was unpaid. I was unpaid for that work, and I was happy to do it. And then around April of 2019, they came back to me and they said, "Hey, we got this government contract, and we're doing a consultation for a month. Would you like to join us?" I said, "This is perfect. I can actually apply my development studies degree here and use my research skills." And I said, "Yeah, let's." I took the opportunity. It was for a month. It was a great learning opportunity. I got to meet a lot of people in the nonprofit space, continued to build my network, and then spent another 2 or 3 months unemployed. And then a federal election happened. And for most of us who are international, we're like, oh, this is Canadian politics. It's not our politics from back home. There's no space for me to engage, but I was encouraged by others in my network to come to the campaign office to actually help. And I was fortunate the campaign office is down the road from me, a 5-minute walk. And I was the youngest person in there. Immediately, the second I walked in, they're like, okay, you need to take over our social media and our communications strategy. So I brought the average age from like 55 down to maybe 30. So that was so much fun to work on a campaign. I didn't go into that space with the goal of getting a job in politics. I knew it would be hard to do that. I did it because I wanted to learn, and I wanted to continue to build my network, and I did. There were people who were open to connecting me to other people who had job opportunities. But then I was fortunate that the candidate that I volunteered for had a vacancy in her office just as the election was ending. So a spot opened up for me. And that's how I spent about 2 years. It was during COVID as well, which was a really challenging time. Most of your international students, you may have joined York during COVID or right before COVID. So many of you may have had issues with like study permits and visas. So I was working with a lot of people similar to yourselves who were having those issues, or people, mostly people who had immigration issues, doing casework for them, but also following what was happening in the House of Commons, keeping my boss up to date. And that was so much fun. And that kind of allowed me to jump from the world of politics to the world of advocacy.
Okay, thank you, Samir. We also promote volunteering. I know it's hard working sometimes multiple part-time jobs while doing your studies, but volunteering is a great way to gain experience, also build your network, as Samir said. So if it's possible, I really encourage it as well. Thank you, Samir. We'll go to Shivam next. If you could just tell us about your career journey as an international student and maybe what your first relevant position was in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like I'm giving an interview, but this is I bring this up in all my interviews because I feel it's really important. So I start right at when I was 12, 13 years old. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So my dad owns a business, he owns a restaurant, and I started helping him when I was quite young. And that's pretty much when my career started. So my career started when I was 15 years old. I started helping him in the business, and by the time I was 17, I geared up to take over the business, and I did take over the business for about 2 years, and um, kind of managed a lot of things. And as you can imagine, in a small business, there's just so many hats that you have to wear, and on a day-to-day basis. And I learned a lot. But in 2020 or 2019 is when I decided to pursue further studies, and I decided to come to Canada, and it was completely different. But in a sense that I was learning new things. I was studying the same things, but in a different way. I did my BCom in India. I started my BCom in India, and then I took a transfer to York. So I was studying what I had. I completed about 70% of my degree in India. So there was some overlap, but I could see what the courses that I've done in India were completely different from the courses that I'm doing here. The matter of the way of studying, the way of communicating things, the assignments and stuff. So it was completely different. But I did know that I have hustled and I have made my way through India, so I can do that here as well. So I ever since I joined, I think Brittany, I mentioned you the other day. My second day at the university was in the career center. So I went to the career center, and on my second day, I believe it was 7th January, 6th, on 6th January it opened. And yeah, from the very get-go, I was like, okay, let's push from the first day. And within a month, I got a job in a field that was similar to what I had grown up in. So I got a job at A&W. A lot of people, what the mistakes that they make, or one of the things that they do is they discount these roles while applying to for full-time roles and at banks like RBC or all the big five banks or big companies. But I have taken all these roles and have learned something out of it, and they're a part of me. So yeah, A&W, I worked at A&W for a couple of weeks, then COVID hit and things were upside down for a bit, and we didn't know what's happening. But I always like to think and always like to take a step back and assess the situation. So during COVID, I'm like, okay, let's enjoy this time, but let's think about what's next. And that's when I was like, okay, in at that point in my career, the jobs that I could find were only supply chain related because a lot of businesses had closed down, but supply chain was still going, and grocery shops and some essential businesses were still going. So I applied to UPS, and that's as my second job was at UPS. I worked at UPS for 4 months. It was hard grunt work, lifting stuff and lifting heavy packages every day in and day out. And I was also taking full-time courses then. So and I was working full-time at UPS during that time. So it was really hard work, and that made me appreciate what I was doing at A&W in India and all my studies as well. So UPS made me. It was a completely different industry or completely different work that I did. But at UPS, I learned certain skills, and I learned being organized and being meticulous, and I learned that I can pivot really quickly. So because at UPS we had a task where we had to learn all the pin codes around Canada, and they were like, this is a package, you don't know, you can't refer it. There's a paper that they give you where you have to refer it to, but you don't have that paper ever. It's somewhere around, somewhere lying around, and you have to memorize all the pin codes. And I was able to memorize the pin codes quite quickly, especially because I'm new to the country, so I had to do that. But yeah, since UPS, I connected to, I had good communication skills. I connected to my supervisors, my managers, the operations head, and from there, my kind of career kind of started. I gained some skills that are really important in this country, which is networking and good communication skills. And yeah, a few months went by, and I started looking into internships. I went to a lot of career fairs, a lot of networking events, and I remembered one. I just found one recruiter that I really connected with, and I just kept at it. Started reaching out to her again and again, again, and yeah, I applied for a role. I hadn't heard for the regarding that role. It was an internship, and I emailed that recruiter, hey, I'm really interested. um I feel I'll be a good fit, and I'm keen, I want to learn and this and that. And I think a couple of days later, I heard back, and I got that role. So that's when my career at RBC and the banking industry started, which was, I think, summer of 2021. And from there, it's always pushing and always doing multiple things at one time. So in the last 2 or 3 years, I have held 10 roles or so, and I have worked 60 hours, 70 hours. I have worked full time with studies, and if not full time, then I have held two part-time jobs with studies. So I feel that just growing up in an entrepreneurial family and seeing my dad hustle, waking up at 4 a.m., that instilled a quality in me that I could take to the workplace as well. And that helped me really succeed in Canada, and or at least set up my career in the early stages. So yeah, from there was a lot of networking within the company at York, and I also grabbed some opportunities and stepped up where I saw a gap. So I built a club at York University. It's the Association for Business and Data Analytics, because there's no club like that. Like, okay, that's another learning curve for me. Let's try that. I worked at York University, the Tate McKenzie Center at the gym, and even in that gym, I took two roles, and I was like, okay, that's a completely different ball game. Let's try that. And from there, it's I kept getting another internship and the third internship after that. And yeah, in my final internship, I was pushing a lot. Even in my internships, I have held a lot of leadership roles. I have held a lot of volunteer. I did a lot of volunteer experience. One part of it was giving care packages in downtown Toronto. So I did a bit of that, and it was quite challenging work. So kudos to you for doing that. 10,000 packages is a lot. But yeah, from there my career started, and it kind of picked up. And in my last internship, I got into communication and working with a lot of people who were hiring full time for 2023. And finally, I was able to narrow down to a few offers. And finally, I was in a good spot where I had the luxury to choose where I want to go, as opposed to being forced that this is the only offer you have and this is what you have to take. But it all boils down to your hustle, how much you're willing to push. And if you keep at it, sooner or later, things are going to turn up. And I always think if something I don't get something, it's a part of a bigger plan. So I'm like, yeah, it's at the end of the day, whatever happens, happens for good. And just keeping your face up, your head up, and keep pushing.
Oh, thank you, Shivam. That was a great example of reaching out to a campus recruiter directly. They tell me that those students, who reach out and make those personal connections, they do look at your resume and look at your qualifications. And so they said they can't answer everybody, but it does show that you're really interested and keen on working there. So it's a great example of going above and beyond, not just submitting an application and hoping for the best, but reaching out to that recruiter to really express you're interested, and then building your network from there. So thank you so much. Fikayo, same question. If you could tell us a little bit about your career journey as an international student, and what was your first job in the field?
Yeah, so I definitely resonate with Shivan's story. So I can remember when my friend Lorenzo, I was looking for an internship at York, right? And I was in my 4th year, and I pretty much had not found anything. And I knew, and I'll tell every student here, that having an internship before you graduate is a key, right? Because it gives you great work experience. Because in my opinion, it's like a launching pad, because you already know the system and you know how those conversations go already, right? So I knew I needed one before I graduated, and he gave me the email of a recruiter, right, at TD Bank. And when he gave me that email, I did reach out. And to cut the long story short, right, I got the internship. And to be honest, I did not know what business analysis was when, she was telling me that we have internships, we have a couple. Are you interested in a business analyst role? I just knew I wanted an internship. So I was like, yeah, sure. Like, let's do it. And I went into that internship, right? And the first question my manager asked me was, what do you know about software? And I was like, I don't know anything about software, but I'm willing to learn, right? And I had watched enough, videos on YouTube, right? And I went back that next day, and I was like, okay, and I was just like spitting stuff out from YouTube. But the lesson from that is that even though I didn't know anything about software at that time, right, I was like, I'm willing to learn. So you have to show that willingness to learn. I was like, okay, like, I'm not messing up this opportunity I have, right? And similar to Shivam as well, my internship got renewed, right? So it kept on getting extended. And to be honest, there are times where I booked meetings with my vice president, right? My VP. And I was like, indirectly telling him, I really need this, right? So indirectly. So in a subtle way, you're saying, yeah, you're bringing. So here's one thing you should do in your internships. I have a desk, like not a desk. I have a note, right? A file of all my achievements, what I've done right, all the good things I've done, right? All the conversations I've had all the times when they gave me kudos, gave me good points, all of that stuff with the date and the time, right? So I went to the vice president and I was like, hey, like I'm good indirectly, right? But pretty much telling him, you don't want to lose me, right? But I have the facts to back it up, right? And then they extended, my internship twice. And then I think I couldn't stay because you have to switch teams after a year. So I now went into the change management team, still at TD Bank. And like Shivam as well, I can remember my dad, because I'm an international student. So my dad was like, I sent you there to read your books. And I was like, but I need to do this, like I knew I needed to do this internship, right? So I was like, so my dad was like, okay, drop the internship and focus on school because he didn't want anything to affect school. But I did both. And let me tell you, I was really crazy because I had two laptops on top of each other. And I would close one laptop, open the next laptop. So I don't know how Shivam did it with UPS and school, because that's intense. At least I was on a desk, right? And I was just switching laptops. So kudos to you, bro, for going to UPS and then doing schoolwork. Like, I'm not sure I could have done that, but I know like it was super, super long hours to pretty much just be doing schoolwork, and I was a dean student ambassador, and I was just doing like I was in club. So I'll definitely tell all of you on the call that are students, I was in African Student Association, I was in Nigerian Student Association, I was in the whole mix, and that's why I like York, because it gives you the best of both worlds, right? So there was just a multicultural week, right, that I think happened at York, right? And York doesn't just give you great education, but it gives you great connections as well. So I have friends from Somalia, I have friends from Afghanistan, I have friends from India. I like my roommates that, helped me take good headshots at the time, right? Was from India. So I got to really connect with a lot of people. And one thing is that people tend to stick with who they know and people from where they are from, right? So I'll definitely say do not do that, right? Like have friends and make connections with people from different areas, right? So after I did that, when I was in the change management team, the surprising thing is that I was an intake manager as an intern. Now, the only thing was that I was doing the work of an intake manager, but I was getting paid as an intern, right? So now some people will look at that as, oh, that's a bummer, but it trained me for management. It really did. And I feel like that really, really accelerated my career, right? That was one of the best things that could have happened for my career, because you can imagine I was like a level 9 at the bank as an intern, right? And I was in those conversations, and the conversations are totally different from a level 6, right? And I was an intern and I was doing the actual work of a level 9, right? So I was getting, it was like part-time, right? When it was the second internship, it was part-time, but I was putting in full-time hours. And so it was part-time, the whole internship, and it was part-time connections. So I was making sure that I'm building my network. Like that was super, super important for me. And it still is very important for me. So I would have messages, I would create template messages. And that was when I was building my LinkedIn. So if you don't have LinkedIn, you should definitely go and get it right now. Like I'm not even going to ask you if you have it or not. Just go to the App Store and go and get it, because that's a game changer, right? And it's going to super boost your career. And a lot of people, two things, they feel that, oh, they need to be a big person to be on LinkedIn. No, you just need to share your experience. If you got an award at York, you share it. If you just did well in your schoolwork, you share it. If you had a good multicultural week, you share it. So you share your experiences. Another great tip is to have a smiling profile picture. that also helps as well. So I used to have a smiling profile picture, but I changed it because I really like my profile picture now. So I do not have a smiling profile picture. So maybe my next one will be a smiling profile picture. But let me tell you, a smiling profile picture is a game changer, right? And a smiling profile picture is my headshot right now on flyers and stuff. So where was I? Intake manager. Yeah, that was really, really amazing. Now, the kind of person I am, my interests tend to vary. So after doing change management, and I wanted to do change management during the pandemic because I low-key like pressure. Like I like it when there's pressure and, so like there was a lot of things going on, right, during the pandemic, and there were a lot of changes that was being made at the bank. So I wanted that experience, right? So I did that for a bit, and then I was like, okay, I want something different. So I went into marketing, and there's something called Agency 361 at TD. So I did that as well. And then I quit. I quit TD, and I started and continued. I already started the not-for-profit work I was doing, right? So projects impacting lives, like I said earlier, right? So I had started that actually at York. I was at Pond Residence, and my mom gave me the name Project Impacting Lives. And at York, we really started on my birthday, and we were distributing the care packages, right, on the streets to people. And I really had that burden in my heart. And I was like, okay, people are suffering and we need to help them, right? And I tell people we're not in the housing business, we're in the love business, and we're showing people that we care about them, we love them, and we respect them. And the care packages are instruments of love, right? So it was toothpaste, toothbrushes, emergency blankets, warm socks, warm gloves. It was all of that fun stuff. And we really had to do the groundwork, right? So it was me for a good chunk of the time, just going to meetings, having conversations with people, and then a team started forming. So before you know it, we became 10, and now we're 50, right? There are 50 people on the team, and then we now started winning like the Toronto Community Champion Award and the Diana Award. But before all of that, it was just me and a couple of my friends, and we really just wanted to support like the community. Like that was pretty much it, right? So I would tell every student as well of just keep on showing up, just keep on doing the work. Don't worry about the accolades. They come as gifts on the road, right? So now if you look at, oh, I want the Diana Award, or I want the whatever it is award, right? You may get tired, and it gets tiring at a point if you're looking at the accolade or the trophy alone. But if you focus on the journey, right? So, and you actually have fun in the process, right? So you find what you enjoy doing and you actually have fun in the process, you realize that, okay, it's worth it at the end. So at TD, there was a part of the bank I enjoyed, and the part of the bank of marketing at the bank was, it wasn't what I thought it was, right? So that's what I would tell everyone of explore. This is your time to explore. Don't just, stay in one, I would say position. If you're not really enjoying that, you should actually explore and make sure that you realize that who you work for, so your manager is more important than your position, in my opinion. Because I've had managers that really push you and take your career, like just they are plugging you everywhere, right? So I've had those kind of managers, and they're a blessing from God, in my opinion. But yeah, who you work for. So now as you're going on to pick your careers and what you're going to be doing, right? Like the salary is nice and all of that stuff, right? But who you work for, right? Who your manager is, who the company is more important than, okay, I want this fancy title or things like that. All those things will come eventually.
Thank you, Makayo. I think you highlight something that we know in the Career Center, that careers are not linear. And it's okay to start in one career and make a switch. So and just be open to that switch, be open to opportunities that you didn't think of before, because they're out there, and that it's not that you start in one field and you just stay there your whole life. It's okay to switch, and okay to start not-for-profits. That's amazing. But yeah, so be open to opportunities and be willing to switch. I'll say this, we're at 6:11, so I'm gonna ask one more question, then we'll see if the audience has questions. So please feel free to write them in the chat, or feel free to come off mute. But I'll say my last question for the panelists is, what advice or resources do you suggest for international students who are looking to find their first job in Canada? Where should they be looking, and what should they be marketing? And we'll start with Shivam this time.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I just the wrong question.
Sure. What advice or resources do you suggest for international students who are looking for their first jobs in Canada? And how should they market themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of advices and resources, in terms of resources, I would say Career Center does offer some pretty good resources. So yeah, they haven't paid me, but they do offer resources, so that's not a plug for them. But I was telling Brittany the other day that I think there's a resume template that the Career Center offers. I use that a lot, and I even forwarded that to my friends at York, and suggested them that they use it. I had a completely different looking resume before that. There's so many resumes builders online these days. I feel they don't really do the trick. So it's good to stick to the old ways. I've done both. I've used the new way and you've used the old way. But in my opinion and in my experience, the old way works best. So yeah, the Career Center does give some good resources, not just the resume template, but there's some interview prep material, there's some cover letter prep material, and these days there's always ChatGPT that you can take help of, but you need to be smart how you use it. You can't just tell ChatGPT to build your resume; it won't work. Um, so yeah, those are some of the resources that you can use in terms of what you can do to help you get a role, or how you can push. I would suggest that network a lot. Just go meet people as much as you can. Just an example, there's a RBC on campus that you can go to. There's a BMO on campus that you can go to. So that's just one example. And there's another financial institution at York Thames. I'm forgetting the name, but that's another company that you can go to, and you can network a lot. And from their networks, they can also connect you to somebody, and then it's a chain. Whenever you have a coffee chat or a networking call with somebody, ask them to connect you to somebody else. So once you build that chain, your network will start to expand, and it would help you down the road. And also attend as many events as you can. One of my friends, she got a full-time role at a big accounting firm without even interviewing for the role. And she just got the role from networking. I think she went to a networking event that they had. It was a Women's Day event, and then they also had a follow-up event. And yeah, she just got a call from the recruiter, and randomly she just got the job, because they liked her so much, and she connected with everybody in the team. So sometimes it will conflict with their schedule, and you might think that it's important that you prioritize other things over it, but it's if you can move your schedule around, it's definitely worth the priority, and definitely worth putting your schedule into. And yeah, attend as many sessions as you can, meet as many people. And again, something that I've done in past is I have learned a plethora of things. I have tried to touch upon different industries, different kind of work. If you can do that, sometimes you may not find what you love, but at least you'll find what you don't like. So once you find that, you can eliminate where you don't want to go. I used to think that I like one kind of role, during my first internship, or before that when I went to the career center. But as soon as I did my first internship, I was like, yeah, I can't do this. I gotta switch. So that's how I tried a different thing. Then I tried the third thing, and even now I'm trying all the time. Even now in my role, I feel like I like this part, but I don't like that part. So in short, keep hustling and keep pushing, and yeah, keep building out your network, and things will turn up.
Okay, thank you. Bakayo, is there anything you wanted to add? Advice to the students looking for their first job?
So the first thing I would definitely say is to connect with recruiters. So you can network, right, with hiring managers. And the way I used to do it pretty much is when you see a job, it says this role will be reporting to, so whatever, let's say senior manager of data analysis, then you go put that on LinkedIn and you can connect with the, senior manager and send them a message letting them know you've applied for the role. And I actually have a friend that got a role like last week and she's starting pretty soon. And that was how she got the job, because she connected with the senior manager, right? And the senior manager pretty much reached out to the recruiter and said, please, like, put this at the top of the list, and that facilitated the process. That's the first way. The second way I would say is also to volunteer. So for example, if you want to be a project manager, right, in, let's say, tech, a good way is you could volunteer in project management at a community organization or a non-for-profit, and that gives you the skills you need, and it shows that, okay, you know how to manage projects, right? So you want to go and get those skills in different organizations as well. So that's the second thing I'll say, is to volunteer. Third thing I'll say is, if you want to be a project manager, then there are probably project management associations. You want to join those, because you would be able to connect with other project managers or people that have interest in project management. And that can be a game changer for you, because they could share some information, or they could connect you with project managers and you could learn from them. And you don't have to make the same mistakes they made earlier in their career. Last thing I would say is to get certifications in the field that you're in, right? So there's some certifications like the PMP for project management, since we're using that example. Though for project management, you need, I think, 3 years of experience, right? But there's another certification that I think you need 1 year of experience, CAPM. So most careers have certifications, right? And to just get that certification, if you can, while you're in school, or if you immediately you finish school, you could get that certification as well. And that, in my opinion, would help you stand out, because a lot of students just don't get certifications while they're in school. And that really helps you. When I was graduating, I got 2 certifications immediately after uni, like 2 days after, because I was like, okay, certifications would help you, stand out from the pack. So hopefully those, points help.
Thank you. Samir, did you want to add any points?
I think I'll just add a few things. Yeah, on volunteering, from my experience, when I talk to people who, like, either at my work or if I'm talking to people who've just interviewed for other work, one of the things that employers really care for is they want to see you as a holistic person. They understand that you're applying for this job. Yes, it's a 9 to 5, but that's not your life. You have a whole other life outside of the 9 to 5. You have weekends, hopefully, and they want to know what you do with your time. So Fikayo's point of volunteering, I think, is a crucial one. You can do that very easily if you're on campus. There's hundreds of clubs on campus that you can join. Being able to say to a recruiter that, hey, I was in charge of communications for such and such association. We held a conference for this many people. we were able to secure this much in funding. These were our high-level partners. Those are skills that people pay for. If like you can leave university with a degree in economics, but you have a background in business development already. You already have the ability to build and maintain relationships. So that's like number one. And Shivam and I think share this. He started a club at school for a topic that he saw a gap. I did the same. The Development Studies Association at Founders College, it came and went a few times, and I recognized that it was important. Brought it back. It's still up and it's still alive. It's still connecting students to employers, still connecting students within themselves for academic help. So being able to even say, hey, I started a club, I'm able to be a leader within my faculty and get professors to back me, provide me funding, and just be able to do a lot of really big things. That's something a lot of people who are hiring for jobs really look for. They're looking for leaders, and that's even if you're applying for a lowly intern job or you're working your way all the way up to like the C-suite. Leadership really counts. I think for those of us who went to York, we're blessed to have an organization in the city of Toronto called the Toronto Youth Cabinet, for youth advocacy group that is essentially lobbies on behalf of us to the municipal government. I had the opportunity post-graduation. I wasn't aware of this organization when I was in school, and I tell everyone about it now. Join the TYC, because it is a space where you will not only meet students who are of your age, your background, but you'll also be able to learn how to advocate for yourself on issues that matter to you. So I personally love public transit. I think it's important. Whether like you're trying to connect students to work, or you're trying to connect them to places of play and leisure. I thought that was important. That was my file for 2 years, and I loved it. A lot of the people who went through the TYC are out there doing spectacular work. They use that and they leverage it not only for jobs, but also for grad programs. Not everyone over here likely wants to go straight into the job market. So all those experiences are things that you can highlight in your letters when you're applying to grad school. So that's one. And I think the piece around professional associations, I think, is really important as well. So if you're a student and you're interested in advocacy, for example, or engaging with government, there's the Public Affairs Association of Canada. They have a chapter here in Toronto. My work on a day-to-day basis is all around public policy, public relations. Had I known they had a discounted student membership, I would have gone and joined, because then I would have been able to meet and engage with folks who are currently hiring for internships. So there's several organizations who will have a lot of their directors and a lot of their managers who are in these associations, and they're kind of looking at the younger folks and trying to see who here is like the cream of the crop and who can we hire for these opportunities. And it's also those places that will have, like, that's where you'll first hear about a job opportunity before it's marketed outside. So if you're aware of a particular industry you're looking for, find that association and join. Join your student clubs. Start one if you don't already know one. If you don't already see one that fits your needs. And the Career Center does a spectacular job, of course, of connecting you to future employers. But I know that they're busy, you're trying to balance work and school. And one of the resources I found helpful post-graduation, I live about an hour or so commute away from York, but the city of Toronto has employment services that's very accessible for most of us. It was about a 20-minute bus ride for me. And I had a person who would help me one-on-one with my resume. She offered me coaching for job interviews. So this isn't to say the Career Center is not doing its job. It is. It very much is. But for those of you who are very far away from York after graduating. If I'm not mistaken, Brittany, you can still access the Career Center for a year. If you're past that 1 year mark, the City of Toronto does offer those services, so you can always access them.
Yeah, we actually increased it to 2 years now. So you can,
Amazing.
yeah, you can access the Career Center 2 years after graduation. And we'll still do one-on-one resume, cover letter. You can still join all of the webinars. I just want to highlight one because it was brought up, LinkedIn. I agree, please get on LinkedIn. We do have workshops at the Career Center to help you build your profile and also use it for networking. Very important these days. So thank you to all of our panelists for those tips. I do have more questions, but if we have questions for the audience, I want to prioritize those. We want to make sure you get the most out of this session. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute and ask. I don't see any right now in the chat. I'll just give it a few seconds if anyone has any questions. I see one in the chat, thank you. How do I start creating my own network? I understand that this requires communicating with people, but how do I start? Should I go directly to them and tell them that I'm interested in this industry?
You mind if I take that, Brittany?
Sure, go ahead.
So the first thing you want to do is don't go to them and say, hey, I want a job. The first thing you want to do is build a relationship. In my current work, relationships are make or break. It can open doors or close them. And I think the first step is connect with them and say, I think you're a really interesting person. People love it when you tell them they're an interesting person and you want to learn more about them. Gas them up a little bit and they'll open up. So tell them, I've looked at your LinkedIn, I've looked at your story. I think you're an interesting person. We went to the same school. I'd love to connect for 15, 20 minutes to discuss your career trajectory, how you got there, what you learned, and how I might be able to apply it in my work, or as I try to develop my path post-graduation. When you say that, you're already telling them, you're indicating to them two things. One, you're trying to show them genuine interest in their field and the work that they do. And I think that's very important. You do not want to be disingenuous. So make sure you're connecting with people in a meaningful way. If you know that connection is not going to go anywhere, don't waste your time and don't waste theirs. So make sure you're genuine. And the second, make sure you close it in a way that you say, I'd like to take what you will pass on and apply it in my own work. And then continue to have those conversations. You never know, that person or someone in that organization will be hiring for a job. And that person is your direct line manager or your direct line manager's manager. And then when you're in the job interview, you're like, oh, hey, I've seen you before. We met for coffee 2 or 3 months ago, and we talked about your experiences. So I think being able to build those relationships even before you apply for a job is important. If you're interested in a particular organization and you say, I won't talk about TD Bank or RBC in this case, I'll talk about like in the advocacy world. Let's say you're interested in the Chamber of Commerce and you want to learn about what we do. I think it's powerful to be able to connect with people who work at the organization and say, hey, I'd like to learn about what the organization does. I'd like to learn about what you do, and then leave it at that. You're using it more as a research. You're kind of doing more research. And then you can connect with them later on and say, hey, I've applied for a such and such role that kind of aligns with the work that you do. Would you be able to help me with my resume and cover letter? Do you think this kind of aligns with what you would expect to see if you were applying for this job? then if they're ever hiring for that job, they will know who to come to first, because they know the type of work that you'll produce in your writing. They know the experience that you've already developed, you already have, and you already have a working relationship. So in short, just be genuine, do your research on the organization, and try to build relationships first, and don't tell them, hey, I'm interested in the job first. That shouldn't be your go-to. You want to show them you're interested in them and their organization, and then bring up employment opportunities later on.
Okay, Shabam, do you want to add any questions? Any points, sorry?
I actually have some stuff to add. Samir definitely said pretty much all I wanted to say, but I actually have a template message that I'm going to read to you. So I'll suggest you have a template message when you're reaching out. So template message says, hey, the name of the person. So this is for someone that inspires you or you're looking to learn from, right? Hey, the name of the person. Hope you're having an awesome day. I came across your page and I'm very inspired by your career path. It's absolutely phenomenal. This is the gassing up that Samir was talking about. I would love to learn about your experience at whatever the name of the company is, right? So Chamber of Commerce, RBCTD, the path you took to get to where you are today, the types of networking and professional events that you found the most beneficial, and the values and skills that contributed to a successful career like the one you have. Amidst your busy schedule, I would appreciate the opportunity to connect with you for a 15-minute virtual meeting. Please feel free to select the time that is most convenient for you on my Calendly. So you would have a link there. Calendly is free. You should definitely have a Calendly, and yeah, you'd have like times that work for you there. You link it to the message. Thank you so much for reading, and I look forward to meeting with you. Have a great day. Now, your work doesn't stop there. After the meeting, you would say, it was a pleasure connecting with you, the name of the person. I love learning about your experience at the name of the company, and you taught me so much about. So you have to be taking notes when you are having the conversation with them, right? So it shows that you value their time, and it shows that, oh, wow, this person was listening and this person really took a lot of value out of this, right? So you taught me so much about whatever they taught you about. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Have a lovely day. Now, you are building a professional relationship, but your work doesn't stop there. So after 2 months, right, or a couple of weeks, right? So let's say they asked you to go, I don't know, read a book, or they suggested you go and do something. You have to update them, right? And say in a very nice way, right, that you've done what you said or what they suggested you should do. Right. So, for example, if they told you to, let's say you wanted to learn about leadership and they suggested a book, Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last, for example, right? Or Start with Why. And you tell them, okay, after a month, I've read the book, here's what I learned. Now you're building a professional relationship with them, right? And then they're like, oh, there are times where a VP has told me I should take a break and I should go to the cinema and tell her how that experience was, right? Because she was like, when you become a VP, like, because she told me she sneaks out to go to the cinema now because she has so many meetings and things like that. So that is good advice. And something like that, when I went to the cinema, I went back, I came back to her and I was like, I went to the cinema and I watched this movie. So that is an informal way, and we are still building a relationship. Do you get what I'm saying? So
Great points. Great points. Is there anything that we're missing, Siobhan, that you want to add?
No, I think Samir and Fikayo have covered it all. I probably might ask you for the template, Fikayo. It sounds pretty cool. But yeah, nothing to add. And yeah, network as much as you can. And um, you might find it's a game of numbers. You send out 100 texts, you might get 10 responses back, and then the number would go up slowly and steadily. But yeah, keep at it.
Yeah. I'll just add to start with our alumni because they're fantastic. Like a lot of our York alumni want to help students. So if there's alumni working at those companies that you're interested in, I would reach out to the alumni because they seem very happy to help current students. So I love that template too. But just make it personal to your situation and then see. But that's where I would start just because I work with alumni and they're always happy to help students. So we do have a second question in the chat. How long have you guys taken to find a first job after you graduate from York? So how long did it take you before you secured your first job after graduating?
So I could go first. The good thing that I thank God for is, so I was doing my internships, right? And then they gave me full-time offers from TD. So it didn't take me long. Now I quit. So it took me 22 months before I got another offer, right? So after I quit, it took me like almost 2 years, but I was still doing like a lot in that whole mix, right? So what I would tell you is when you're coming out of uni, before you even graduate, you want to be job searching like from now, before you graduate, right? Because when you're coming out, you want offers to be made to you immediately, right? So that's what I'll tell you. But if I'm answering your question, I had a job as I was graduating York.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, I can go next. So I graduated in the summer of 2018. Feels like a really long time ago now, but it really wasn't. And I didn't have work right out of university. A lot of my friends did. The mistake I think a lot of us do as we try to wind down our degrees is some of us aren't applying to jobs in the 6 months before graduation. I think that's very much key because a lot of people will be starting jobs. A lot of job openings will be for jobs that are starting in will be starting the summer of the year you do graduate. So you do want to get ahead of that. In my case, I had the Dean's Award for Research Excellence. It was the first year it was being released, so I had that as a safety net for 4 months. And then after that, it was all volunteering. And then I got my first job out of university in April 2019, so almost a year after. But I was volunteering between the dare and the job. Did that for a month. Had the summer off. I went back home. I was in Tanzania for about a month. Came back, and then started volunteering again for a political campaign for I think it was September and October, and got that job November 2019. And I've been working since. So it does take a lot of time. And I think we see in the news as well a lot of stories of international students who they come here with the goal of getting permanent residence and citizenship one day. I know that it's very concerning, especially with for a lot of people who we've left back home. The government announced recently that they're reducing the number of study permits that they're going to be issuing. So there are a lot of challenges for international students who will be coming. But for those of you who are already here, I can tell you there is a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. It just takes a lot of planning to get there. And Brittany is very right. There are a lot of us alumni who are out there who are willing to help. You very much just have to reach out and ask first. and just make sure you're reaching out based on a job that is open in our particular field. If you ask me to talk to you about a job in banking, I am not the person to go to. You need to go to Fikayo and Shivam. They are the geniuses there. If you want to talk about politics and advocacy, you can come to me. So just make sure that you're planning ahead and connect with alumni well before. I think that's the trick there.
Yeah, I guess I can go next. In terms of getting the job, I like Fakayo. So I got the offer in my last internship, and so it was in the summer of 2022 is when the last 2 weeks of my internship I wasn't working at all. I was just networking as much as I can, and I was just trying to uh, fish for some offers. And luckily I did get some, and I had the luxury to make a decision rather than being forced to make a decision, which unfortunately in this economy and in this environment a lot of people have to do. So yeah, before graduation, I got the offer, I signed the offer, and everything was set. And I was supposed to join the January of next year. So pretty much the last month that I had, the month that I had between graduation and my job start date was the best month I've ever had. I know what I'm going to do next month, and I was watching TV, I was traveling, and I had so many series that I had missed because of work and because of so many things. I made a list of everything, and I checked the boxes out, and yeah, it was the best time that I had.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Final call for any questions from the audience. I don't see any more in the chat. Is there any more questions from the audience or? Awesome, thank you. Okay. Okay, so I think we'll wrap up then. So I have one final questions for the panelists. If you could leave each student with one final piece of advice concerning their careers, what would it be? And Fikayo, we'll start with you.
I would say, so two things. I would actually give you one for school as you're wrapping up and one for your career. I'll start with school. Make sure, if you haven't gotten or if you don't have an academic advisor. That really, really helped me while I was at York. I'm not 100% sure if I would have graduated if I did not have an academic advisor, right? Because she kept me on track. She made sure I was taking the right courses. She was encouraging for me. She helped me get on the dean's list. Like it was like an academic mentor, right? And that was a game changer for me. I know where my grades were before having an academic advisor, and I know where my grades were when I was graduating, right? So have an academic advisor, go to I was in LAPS, and I was in economics, so I went there. Whatever, course you're in, you could ask York International where you could find your academic advisor. But what I would say from a career perspective is to be consistent, right? So a lot of people, when they first start work, right, they're showing like, okay, I'm fired up, I'm ginger. They wear the nice suits and everything, first day of work, first week, and then towards the middle part, right, towards after like 6 months, they are not as consistent. Not in terms of style, no, but in terms of showing up every day, performing excellently, right? So be consistent, right? Every single day, right? You have to take it as your first day, because you may not know and it may not feel like that, but people are watching. People are watching all the time, and people know the top performers, and people know that even if you don't meet your KPIs, they know when you give it your all. They know when you put in your best. It's always clear. So that's the one advice I would say is that be consistent from the first day, right, to 6 months, 1 year, 5 years in, like every single day, keep showing up excellently. Like don't slack off, right? So that would be my own advice.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you. Samir, any last pieces of advice?
I think the biggest thing is, and I think that this may sound a little counterintuitive, is don't think that the degree that you're pursuing is the field that you'll be working in post-grad. I think for most of us who studied business and economics or commerce, there's this perception, and maybe even I'll say familial pressure, that you've gotten this degree, you need to be working at a bank, you need to be working in consulting. And I fully understand it. I had the same experience. A lot of people will still have those, like, I don't want to blame our parents. Our parents are very much there. They back us. They're the ones who pay for our education. We wouldn't be here without them. But I think it's important to also have a conversation with your parents about what you want to do and where you want to go. Try to have that before to save yourself the pressure when you are applying for jobs, and you don't want to have that conversation right before you start a job and say, hey, I'm not applying my economics degree, I'm going to be doing something completely different. So essentially, don't think that your degree is, don't think what you're studying right now is what's going to get you, like, you aren't going to work in that particular field. Understand that your degree opens multiple doors. It's your choice as to which door you want to go into. And much of that is guided by the volunteer work you do, your passions in school, your extracurriculars. Your time at York is a time for you to explore, learn about what you love, learn about what you care for. Because if you, I think there's a saying, if you for like, I might really be getting this really wrong, but I have to find that saying later on. It's if you work in a field where, like, if you work in a field that you love, you're not really working, you're just living life. But I think that's the number one thing. Don't take your time at York for granted. A lot of people who are commuters will not join extracurricular clubs. They won't go to events at York International. They won't engage with the Career Center because they say, I don't have time. There are 24 hours in a day. There's 5 days in a week where both of those offices are open. It's impossible that there's no overlap. So you kind of need to make time. So just prioritize some things over others. And like Fikayo said, find time to go to the movies and enjoy yourself and decompress when you can.
A great advice. Shivam, any final pieces of advice for students?
Yeah, for sure. So my final piece of advice would be kind of overlapping both Fikayo and Samir's advice. Firstly, as Samir said, that don't expect to work in a field where you graduated, and that's so true. I came in an accounting major. As soon as I did the first course, I'm like, I can't do this. I need to switch. I switched to finance. I know it sounds familiar, but it's quite different. And here I am right now working in audit, which is accounting pretty much. And I didn't want to, but yeah, it is what life has in place for you. And yeah, so never say never, and keep learning. I think learning is very important, and just trying your best. Secondly, don't slack off. As long as you are working hard, as long as at the end of the day, you can say that yes, I worked hard today, and you can sleep with that satisfaction. You are good. You don't need to worry too much. You don't need to think about the future all the time. You don't need to think about getting a job all the time. It may not happen today, but it will happen soon. As I saw this trick somewhere where it was like a scorecard where people rated themselves out of 5 at the end of every day. So that's something that you can do. I didn't do that personally, but I used to talk to myself, and I used to think about whether I have done all that I can in that particular day. And if the answer is yes, I'm satisfied, even though things aren't turning up. And if you keep doing that over and over, it will turn around and you will land a job, or you will land a role that you really want to be in. And also, uh, do not. Sometimes I know a lot of people work part-time. Don't discount that experience. Your work at Starbucks, your work at Tim Hortons, your work at UPS, A&W, it all counts, and it all helps you to be the person that you will become in the next 5 to 10 years. I know I one of the jobs that I loved was Starbucks. I also worked at Starbucks for some time, and that was one of the best jobs that I've ever held. And anybody I talk to in terms of networking as well, I see a Starbucks cup in their hand. The first question I ask is, "What are you drinking? Let me help you with your order. This is how you make a good Starbucks coffee," or something like that. So yeah, it all helps and it all connects in the end.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. I'll turn it over to Nikita now to close the session for us.
Alrighty, give me one moment. Actually, before I give the closing remarks, there is a slide on the TASTE mentoring program, so I'm gonna actually ask Brittany to talk a little bit about that since she leads the program.
Okay, so if you joined tonight, there's opportunities to connect with mentors, alumni mentors one-on-one through the TASTE program. So TASTE stands for Talk About Studies to Employment. We do have an upcoming 30-minute session that you could register for on February 28th or March 26th. And it's just a session on how to do informational interviewing. And then you fill out an application for me and let me know who you'd like to talk to, and I match you to a mentor just for a one-time career chat. So I help you to start building your professional network. And so if you're interested in talking with our great alumni one-on-one, please sign up for one of those sessions.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Brittany. So our goals for this session were to provide students with an opportunity to connect with professionals working in your field of interest and to gain advice and insights from their diverse career journeys. We really hope that you found the information and advice from our panelists really helpful. Please use your reactions or the chat to join me in thanking our panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedules to come in and talk with us today. Yeah, huge shout out. I really enjoyed listening to each and every one of you. It was fantastic advice. Before we end for today, we do have a couple of things to share with you all, starting with some information on an upcoming event. So if you're interested in working while studying and are looking for information on various opportunities, either on or off campus, we do have an in-person event that is hosted by the Career Center, actually, taking place on February 28th from 3 to 4 p.m. in the Alumni and Career Lounge. I believe it's a new lounge in York Lanes. So please do come attend the event. Additionally, the Career Center hosts amazing workshops and events like this one that are centered around providing students with the right skills, tools, and resources, as well as opportunities for networking with companies and successful alumni like the folks that you've met today. So please do follow them on their social media by scanning these QR codes. I'm just gonna leave it on for a few seconds. And then finally, York International also hosts various different events and programs centered around international students. So please do follow us on our social media platforms because we're always sharing information on there as well. So I'm going to leave that on for a couple of seconds. And that finally wraps everything up for today. Thank you so much for joining today's session, and I hope everyone has a lovely evening.
Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.